We have just a couple more things to do on this effect. One of them is one of my favorite effects in visual effects. It's sort of an energy pulse, like sort of lightning kind of traveling across a surface. So the idea is that as this effect builds up, there's energy kind of flowing across his arm and gives it shape and kind of a little bit of anticipation, that kind of thing. It's sort of like those Jacob's ladder things, this kind of thing, where you have this sort of like lightning that kind of travels up so you can kind of see the energy moving. So what we're going to do is make our very own homebrew one of those. And here's how we're going to do it. First thing we're going to do is let's move to a frame that isn't so bright and flashy and stuff. Let's move to this kind of frame. First thing we want to do is make this just the energy streak. And then we're going to kind of move it around and stuff. A great way to make things like this is with fast noise. That's this effect right here, the second icon. We'll just drag this into our flow here. And what this does, if we hit 2 on the keyboard, check this out, is this generates clouds basically. And if we adjust things here in the inspector, like our scale and our detail, you can see it's kind of making these cloud shapes. And without the LUT, it kind of makes a little more sense. There's these soft puffy clouds. This is a great way to make stuff that kind of looks natural. You can make fog or smoke or what we're about to make right now. So what I want to do is put a lot of contrast into this so that there's really quite a bit of difference between the dark part and the light part. We'll switch over to color. And this color, we're going to pick this kind of cyan color as well, like this. And we're going to just scale this down even more. Let's scale it down quite a bit. And we're also going to turn on seethe. So what this does is it basically just kind of changes this over time. So we'll just push the seethe rate up. And now we have this kind of just kind of warbly clouds here. And what's cool is if we merge this over stuff, bring this into our media out, and switch this apply mode to something like screen and blend it down a little bit, we start to have this kind of cloudy effect. Blend it up maybe a little more, which obviously looks terrible, right? That's not what we want. But if we were to limit this with a mask, let's say around sort of close to his arm, let's take just a rectangle mask. It's a little bit easier to deal with. We'll just make it really thin and put this over his arm like this. What we can do is have this move left and right and kind of give us that little warbly effect. I think what I'll do actually is make this a softer mask and a little bit skinnier. So it's something like that. So you can kind of see where we're going with this. It goes back and forth like this. But we'll have to limit it to kind of around his arm. The cool thing is that we already have a mask around his arm, right? This arm mask poly over here. If we bring this up in the first viewer, we already have this mask. And so we can reuse this. We can use a mask for multiple things because you can connect a node to multiple things. What we'll do is just connect our arm mask poly to our rectangle mask like that. And we'll put this up here just to have some semblance of order. And with our rectangle mask selected, again, we can go here and adjust how these interact with each other. What we really want is there just to be a white section where these intersect. So let's see which one of these makes that happen. So under merge, if we switch to add, that doesn't work. Subtract doesn't work. But we could do subtract inverted, and that might work. So now it's just showing the intersection between these two masks. So that means if we go down to our media out, show that, we have this energy just showing up where his arm is. We can take this merge and blend it back up a little bit so we can see. And now we have this energy generally like where his arm is. So now all we have to do is animate our rectangle to kind of sweep across his arm. And the cool thing is we don't even have to be that great at it because it's only going to show up where that mask is. So this is kind of the idea. Just swooping this like this. So let's start back here at frame 0. We'll animate the center of our rectangle mask right there. And then by the time he's gone, this should be all the way to the other side. So we'll just push this way. And now we have that sweeping effect. And it already looks pretty cool. but you know, it's a little stiff. I mean, it kind of looks like a mask that's just being pushed back and forth. Let's make this a little bit more organic looking so it doesn't just look like this little kind of oval thing. And one way to do that is by using a displace node. So what we're going to do is take this fast noise and displace it. I'll show you kind of what a displace node does. I'm going to click off of everything, Shift Spacebar and DISP, and we're going to do displace DSP right here, hit add. And now anything that we run through this node, we select this, hit 2 on the keyboard so we can see, will be displaced if we tell it how to displace it. So we can see how this works a little bit by just adding, I don't know, a circle mask to this green input. This green input is the map of how this will be displaced. And so we can just add this ellipse shape, and anywhere where the shape is, this is kind of displacing this a little bit. Because really, if we were to hit 1 on the keyboard, what we're really doing is making a map of black and white, and inside of the circle is white. This displace node down here, if we select this and go up to our displace thing, what that's telling it to do is move the pixels that are in our shot a certain amount by whether this map says white or black. Right now, the type is radial. If we were to switch to X and Y, everything's at 0 right now. But if we change these numbers, we can say, okay, anytime that you see something white, move the pixels that are supposed to be displaced over a little bit. And see, this kind of moves things over. You can also move them up and down, right? So we're going through this slow because it's important to understand kind of what's happening here. So what we can do to make this energy kind of more warbly is use a black and white map to kind of move it around. So what we'll do is get rid of our ellipse. We're going to make another fast noise node. We'll put this here. And remember, a fast noise is just these black and white clouds, right? And let's adjust that a little bit. Let's add a little more detail, scale it down a little bit. Kind of makes these black and white clouds. And we can connect this map to our displace, and look what happens. Everything starts to get really warbly. Look at that. And we can adjust how it moves. And it's going to move differently in kind of these random cloud shapes because it's being driven by this noise. It's saying anytime that it's white, move it a lot. Anytime it's black, don't move it so much, right? And we can adjust how that works. And remember, the cool thing is we can take this noise and we can animate it with the seethe rate. So we can push this up, and now over time, this will go. That's the technical term. So that's really cool if you want something terrifying. But that's going to be especially useful for anything that we want to be kind of organic, like our electricity here. So down in our nodes, instead of displacing everything, we're just going to get rid of this. We're going to displace our fast noise. But before we do that, we're going to actually connect this rectangle mask. Instead of to our merge, we'll connect it to our fast noise. Because we want to treat this fast noise as one image, basically. This limited little thing, we want to treat that as one thing instead of putting in the fast noise and then limiting it. That should make more sense here in a second. What we're going to do is pipe this fast noise through this displace. So we'll do that and then put the displace into our merge. Hit 2 on our displace node so we can see what's going on. We can adjust the displacement here of this whole thing. For our X channel, let's say Luma. Red would work fine, but we'll make sure these are both on Luma, which means that it's controlled by black and white. And we'll mess with this X refraction and see how it kind of turns into a little wispy thing. And this is going to change every frame. So as we go through, it's going to be a little bit different each frame, and it's going to look a lot more organic. So now we have our really cool little displaced energy texture. We can put that over everything. And now look what we got. We got this kind of sweeping over his arm. Looks pretty good. We have a little bit of a problem here where it's red, and that I think is because of the colorization of the fast noise. So right here, this fast noise that we're using for our blue energy. Let's go over to color. Let's turn the alpha all the way up. And let's just make this black and white. We'll check our merge. And I think just instead of screen, let's switch that to color dodge. And that should get rid of that. Again, sometimes it acts wonky, but I think that that'll work fine. Let's go back to our color and make this cyan. That should work. And now we have our little energy kind of flowing through. There is a little bit of offset, like where it's pushing it up. And I think that's from our displace node. And let's just mess with that until it kind of gets to be more reasonable. And kind of make sure that that's going to work. And when you displace multiple things, sometimes it just kind of acts crazy. So we're just going to animate this Y refraction to make sure that it kind of stays where it should be throughout this effect. All right. That looks pretty good. And then right towards the end in our merge, let's blend this down. It'll be completely done by the time this gets really bright. Let's take a look. We have this energy kind of sweeping across him. Let's actually blend this down right there. There we go. Pretty neat. We got one more little part to go on this effect before we're all done. Let's rename our nodes. This is going to be cyan energy FN for fast noise. And this will be displace map FN. And this is going to be energy merge. And what we want to do now is have this kind of do a warp where he kind of gets sucked into a black hole sort of thing. An effect that we're going to use for this is called Dent. So let's select energy merge, hit shift spacebar and type DENT. And we'll use Dent. And this is a wild effect. It really gets crazy. So we're going to take this down a lot. We're going to take the strength down to 0 and the size down a lot to just be kind of right around his hand. And now if we just grab this little text box here, we can see just a little bit goes a long way in this sort of pinching motion. So maybe we'll have this suck back just a little bit, like 0.09. We'll move to right where we're supposed to disappear, frame 10, and we'll have everything happen right then. Now we can just animate this strength at 0.09. Then we'll move back a few frames, let's say something like frame 7, and we'll take the strength all the way back to 0. So now it just kind of has this subtle effect, and right about the time everything calms down, we're going to bring that back to 0. So it actually warps the world around him too. So now it just goes shoomp. It's very subtle. Looks like he kind of just gets sucked in a little bit. And I think that adds a lot. It's not warping the whole world, but it does look like he kind of disappeared into a void there. Gives it a little bit of motion. Let's take a look at our finished effect. That looks pretty cool. Now, the only thing that we'd probably add to this is a little bit more lighting. If there's this huge bright light here, things are gonna be interacting with it. There's gonna be kind of this cyan light around here. This is something that's a little bit easier to do in color correction, so we're just gonna go ahead and do that then. But the main effect here, where we add all the elements together, great thing to do in Fusion. We'll add some of that lighting in a little bit. But it looks pretty good as is. Cool.